Hey, what's up, 12s? I'm AB Hasselbeck, and this is the Seahawks Collective presented by Hog Media. Joining me today are three guys who will get us caught up on all things Seattle Seahawks. Brian Nemhauser, Hawk blogger, Rob Staten from the Seahawks Draft blog, and Michael Sean Dugar from The Athletic covering the Hawks. We got a lot going on today ahead of the last preseason game, and week one is coming up. We'll go through the Hawks' dominant win over the Chiefs last Friday, run through who will be in this wide receiver room and the starting O-line, and potentially a name that you might not be prepared to hear. We'll talk tush push thoughts, okay, and some injury updates. Also, a massive potential trade going on with the Seahawks. And of course, what should be on your mind going into this joint practice in Green Bay and the last preseason game. But feel free to drop any questions you have for these guys, and we'll try to get to them all. But are any of you guys going to Green Bay? Anyone making the trek out there? Okay, Mike, you excited?
Yeah. Oh, I want to be. I do. It's just such a hard city to get to unless you're in somewhere where the NFC North is. There's not much to do. I mean, even when I went in 2019, I think it was for the playoff game, or 2021, maybe both. It was just like Lambeau wasn't even that cool. I feel like the nostalgia and the history of like these old stadiums, it doesn't hit as much as being at like Cowboy Stadium. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. Minnesota Stadium, just all the new ones really, SoFi, Vegas. Like those are all much cooler than like where the Bears play. The Bears are building a new stadium now, which makes sense because I went in 2018. I was like, this is a dump. Like, what are we doing here? So I am going. I do like joint practice, though. I've come around on that. I was with Pete before saying I don't see the point. I'm a little bit more on board now. So that is, I guess, a benefit of going.
And Brian, you're not going?
I'm not. I have a different take on Lambeau than Mike. I loved my trip to Lambeau back in 2015. I was there for when the Seahawks were playing in that game, second game of the season. That was the Cam Chancellor still holding out game. But I love my experience there. I love the people I met there. But it is not an easy place to get to, especially from Seattle. And the hassle, the expense, and then to get to one joint practice, for me, it just wasn't worth it. And the benefit of being my own boss is I just get to say, hey, I'm going to take a few days and recuperate here, and I'll just pay attention to the pros like Michael Sean Dugar, and he'll tell me what's going on in practice.
Yeah, Mike,
Indeed,
you gotta fill us in. I've never been to Lambeau. My dad started his career in Green Bay, so my parents actually spent a few seasons out there. And then I was born right when my dad got sent to Seattle. So it's always somewhere that I gotta cross off the bucket list at some point. But we'll see. But let's get into the last preseason game against the Chiefs. What a game and what a dominant win by the Seahawks. 33-16 was the final. And I want to hear your guys' top three takeaways from the last home game before we'll see the Seahawks take on the 49ers. So Rob, why don't you kick us off? What were your top three takeaways from this preseason game?
Well, when I was watching the game, I wanted to open a bottle of champagne, but it was 9 o'clock. I was watching the game at 9 o'ck in the morning on a Saturday.
Wait, and a block of
9
cheese?
a.m. Yeah, that's a
block
mimosa.
of cheese as well,
that's a mimosa, Rob.
There was no cheese.
No
there
cheese.
There was no champagne. There was just sadly myself and the noise of my house as we watched that game. So the reason I wanted to do that is because the offensive line looks really exciting. Now, it is just a preseason game, but this is the obvious sort of takeaway from it. The O-line looks great. Abe Lucas looks back to his best. The way that he was playing in that game hints that, he's fully over all of the injury issues now. I've always felt that if he could stay healthy, that he could be one of the best right tackles in the league. So great to see that. Thought Jalen Sundell had a tremendous game. I've watched a lot of center stuff over the last 12 months, the draft and the pro. That was as good a performance as I've watched by a center. Anthony Bradford looked fantastic. He looks ready to deliver on his potential. Zabel was good again. Josh Jones played well at left tackle. So I just think it looks really good. And the way that they ran the ball, very exciting. Obviously, everybody's been talking about it. The national media's been talking about it in the States. So I think that was sort of number one for me. Number two was this looks like a very connected team. And watching the big names on defense and the way that they celebrated Brandon Peely's safety just gave me flashbacks to another era. And this feels like a team that is fully bought in, that it's together. There's great chemistry there. This is just sort of watching from afar, obviously, but that's how it feels. There's a physical toughness there, a clear style of how they want to play on both sides of the ball. So I think this is the team that we've been waiting for, been waiting for a few years for. And I'm excited about it. I'm extremely high on the Seahawks. I think they're going to win the NFC West. So I was very much enjoying that chemistry and that togetherness. And then number 3, I think following on from a topic from last week, I just get an increasing sense that Zach Charbonnet is going to be the starting running back. That performance again showed the way that this seems to be trending. Charbonnet is a good player. They've talked him up constantly. Ken Walker, they've been trying to apply a bit of pressure to him to get back out on the field. And then you sort of see the way that Charbonnet played last week. I think he's going to get this job. So that was my other takeaway from that.
Mike, were you popping champagne during the preseason game, or where did you fall on this one?
I'm a big champagne guy, but no. I will say though, my takeaway, one of them was very similar to Rob's, in that it felt like the first game of 2020 against Atlanta, and the first game of 2021, which I think was against the Colts, I want to say. And the similarity there was that, this offense looks like what they said it's going to look like. And so in 2020, it was, we're going to let Russ cook. I don't know if they had said it yet, but I kind of knew that was going to be a thing. And then Russ looked outstanding against Atlanta. And then in 2021, it was kind of talked up how they would have this Ramsey type of offense. They're going to have everything look the same and build stuff off of that. And they did some of their orbit motions and all that against the Colts. It never looked like that again, actually, after the Colts game. But just how I felt in the press box in both of those games, so I felt Friday is like, everything you told us is how it actually looks. And while I think they went down and scored against the Browns last year when the ones played in the preseason, I didn't have the same feeling, even though that was, again, an encouraging start. So that was good. I think the second thing I took away, particularly after watching the film, I was like, there's going to be more of a learning curve than I think the fans would like with Nicky Manwari. Like, there's clearly some things he does really well, but is also a rookie on a defense that doesn't have a lot of weak spots. So if I was an OC, what would I do? Try to put the ball near him. And that's what they did for the first, I think, 3 plays were all at him or intended to be at him. So that stood out, particularly with how well everyone else played in the secondary and on defense with that first team unit. I think Nick will be okay, but it's going to take some time before you see the player that kind of everyone envisions he can be. Let's see, what was my third thing? I had a third thing. Now I can't remember. Robbie Oots. I just love Robbie. It's like he's just what it looks like. Shout out to Kai Samuels. He does a lot of stuff for On SI, draft stuff, played college ball, a lot of stuff in the trenches. I've had him on a podcast before. A saying that he likes when scouting players is he's what it looks like, as kind of like, this is it, the prototype. Even though Robbie's not like a trained fullback, I guess I would say, from college or anything, he just is what it looks like. And I think that makes the offense look like how it's supposed to look, I think, as well. So, I'm a big Robbie Oots guy. He's already like my favorite guy out of the draft class, I think.
Brian, you started to smile when Mike brought up Robbie Oots. What's your take from this preseason game?
Well, I'm gonna always smile when people bring up Robbie Oots. I think that guy is just emblematic of what I think Mike McDonald's trying to do with this team, and I think was handpicked by Clint Kubiak. And, if you listen to the post-draft conference call when Clint Kubiak called Robbie Oots to let him know that he picked him, he was talking about, like, are you ready to come in and be our starting fullback? You don't usually talk to 5th-round picks like that, and I think there was a lot of clarity that this is a guy that's part of the program they're trying to build. And my takeaway is that I would just say, kind of go back, it's going to be a broken record, at least until it's not, is Clint Kubiak. My expectations have been pretty tempered about what he was going to bring. I thought he was going to be a competent offensive coordinator. I thought he would be a professional offensive coordinator. I didn't know if he was going to be a guy that could be, characterized as innovative, or maybe like pushing the boundaries. I thought some of the things we saw just in that preseason game were clever. I think the sequencing, the thoughtfulness of how he's putting these plays together, how he's playing off certain formations, it was really good. And even little things like the JSN route, the Robbie Oots route that got both of them completely wide open. I'm sure there's teams that do this all the time. I don't see it where someone literally is running one direction and they in the backfield spin around and just run the other direction. It's like a playground kind of route, but it worked both times. Both those guys had no one within 10 yards of them. And then you also saw Jalen Milroe in there. That was another takeaway of, okay, the Seahawks have had players over the years, whether it was Jimmy Graham that they couldn't get a red zone target to, and he was like this Hall of Fame red zone player, and Jermaine Kearse was getting the red zone targets, and no shade to Jermaine, but like there was like, why can't you use the players you have to their strengths? And my question was like, are they going to be clever with Jalen Milroe? And there was a formation there where it wasn't just a tush push. It was Sam Darnold standing behind him, almost kind of like a victory formation, right? Like, 10 yards back. I'm sure we can't really talk about what we saw in practice today, or maybe Mike knows if we can, but Milroe is out there again with Sam Darnold. And I can tell that Clint Kubiak is in his bag kind of thinking about how do we make the most of this special athlete. And so that, to me, count that as two different takeaways, but I think Clint Kubiak looks like a guy that could be a difference-making play caller on offense. I think that he also is looking like a coach that is going to try to take advantage of the strengths of the guys on his team. Jalen Milroe is an example of that, but Sam Darnold's an example. Sam Darnold looks so comfortable, and Mike can attest to it. He did not look that comfortable early on in camp. So like I think that's not just Sam playing better. I think it's Clint Kubiak getting to know what his players are capable of and what they are not. So those are two. I'll give you one less enthusiastic one. I think Byron Murphy is a huge pivot point for this team. If he takes a big step forward and is a disruptive force, this defense is going to be really, really challenging for opponents. If he is just a good player, he was a good player last year. I don't think, bust, we'll take that off the list. That's not what I'm thinking. But I haven't loved, I have not seen a practice. I've not seen a game where Byron Murphy takes over. And they were only in there for a few snaps, but, I went back and I looked. There was one snap that I really liked from Byron Murphy in that opening drive. But in general, he was not really getting into the backfield. He was not causing chaos. And so that's something I'm still waiting to see, because I think he is a huge bellwether for how good this defense can be.
Yeah, well, that's all interesting. And I do want to go back to more of Kubiak's offense, because I think that's what stood out for me is coming into this preseason. You lose your wide receiver core. Lockett's gone. DK's gone. It's kind of like, okay, what's going on? But it's been very clear that Mike Macdonald has had a plan for this offense to be a run-first offense. And that's what we saw so far this preseason. Gray Zabel looked amazing. Also, you mentioned Sam Darnold and how well he's progressed into this offense. He had a lot of time in protection to hit his wide receivers. And I think for me, the highlight of that game was more Bobo. I mean, come on, Jake Bobo. So awesome for out here. Went to Belmont Hill where I am in Boston. So pumped about that. But I do want to talk a little bit more about this new identity for the Seattle Seahawks and Sam Darnold's first time on Lumen Field wearing the blue and green. What sticks out to you? And Rob, we'll start with you. What sticks out to you just about what you've seen so far? We probably haven't seen it all. I'm sure the Seahawks are hiding a lot based off of, Brian, what you just said with Milroe, and maybe some changes we'll see there in more dynamic offensive looks. But Rob, what have you seen and what sticks out to you about the Seattle Seahawks offense so far?
I think just the fact that they know what they want to be. And although, again, it's preseason, and Mike's very right to bring up that I think everyone was really positive about the way they played the Browns last year in preseason and the offense and how that looked. And the games against the Colts in Atlanta, and you think, wow, the Seahawks are really going to go and do things a certain way this year. And then 2 weeks later, everyone's like, well, what happened to that? So you kind of like hope that's not going to happen again. But they just look like they know what they want to be. The zone blocking scheme's working, the running game's working, the offensive line looks better, Sam Darnold looks comfortable. And it did maybe remind me a little bit of when Sam Darnold was the Panthers quarterback. So he took over when the Panthers were 3-8. Baker Mayfield had been benched. They'd fired Matt Rule. So complete changes in Carolina. He finished the season 4-2, and that was including a terrible final game. So it was kind of 4-1 in 5 games. They were the most physical football team in the NFL during that stretch, Carolina. They ran the ball for 166 yards per game. If the Seahawks can do that, that's going to help. And it enabled Sam Darnold just to sort of to be the facilitator. And he had 8 touchdowns and 1 interception in those 5 games. And it just clicked. And when you're sort of watching this offense and you're watching the way that they run the ball and you're seeing Darnold's comfort, and he isn't having to throw the ball 30, 40 yards downfield and make explosive plays and make big plays. He didn't last week anyway. He can work within the offense because the running game is working so well and they can stay on time. So I keep thinking back to that Carolina, that stretch. It does seem a little weird to be sort of pointing to one of the weaker franchises in the NFL, but I kind of look back to those 5 games and think that's the environment you want to create. That's the kind of football team they want to be. That's the kind of environment that's going to help Sam Darnold. We've seen it in those 5 games, and I think it's starting to emerge here in Seattle now.
And Brian, I heard you mention just earlier today how you have seen Sam Darnold really hit this other gear and really take command of this offense. What do you think fans can expect for week 1 when they see him full go with the Seahawks offense?
Well, I mean, one of the things that's really interesting, AB, is I'd be curious if Mike has tracked this. I chart practice, but I can't say I get every single play. I can't remember the last time Sam threw a pick. I've seen Drew Lock throw picks and Jalen Milroe throw picks, but if he's thrown a pick, it's not been many for the last couple of weeks. And if there's a weakness in Sam Darnold's game, it is probably 2 things. 1, a little bit of accuracy. 2, it's a little bit of, putting the ball in places that maybe he shouldn't, and it feels like the best version of Sam Darnold is what he's described learning and really breaking through with last year, which is if the first read's not there, if the timing is not there, take advantage of the dump offs. You take advantage of getting a few yards. The old saying of you can't go broke if you take a profit applies here. And I think we've seen that, but he's added to what started in camp as just a guy that was kind of a check down merchant. Like there was just like dump off after dump off and no explosive plays, to a guy who's now doing what he did last year as well. He led the NFL in explosive passes. People don't realize that. So you're seeing explosive passes pretty much every day, and you're seeing him get rid of the ball on time. I think there's a crispness to how he's playing. And look, I think the dream scenario for Seahawks fans has to be that all of the best things of Sam Darnold come out and the worst parts of him get a little bit muted. And the best things of Sam Darnold, play action. He was the number 1 rated passer in the NFL in close and late situations. Less than 5 minutes to go, within 1 score, had 135 rating last year. Kyler Murray hasn't thrown a touchdown in 3 years in those situations. Brock Purdy has 1 touchdown in those situations in the last 3 seasons. So there are things that Sam Darnold does really, really well, but what gets people uncomfortable is doesn't get rid of the ball fast enough, can be inaccurate, can put the ball in harm's way. So I think that's the thing that right now I'm seeing a lot less of that and a lot more of the things that really make him Sam Darnold, and also Clint Kubiak scheming some pretty simple throws that don't require a lot of talent necessarily. No shade to Sam Darnold, but if Clint Kubiak can do that, I think you're going to get the best version of Sam Darnold.
Yeah, it's interesting that you just bring up his explosiveness last year, because I feel like nationally it's not being talked about. Even on Good Morning Football, they're saying they're putting the Cardinals above the Seahawks in practically every category, especially quarterback. So it's just interesting to hear kind of the underratedness of Sam Darnold. You know what? Probably for the Seahawks, it's a good thing to kind of fly under the radar. But Mike, what's catching your eye about Sam Darnold in this offense so far?
I've been trying to figure out a way to properly detail what Brian talked about that we can't talk about without, because I'm still at the facility.
You guys
here,
are being so cryptic. I feel like Rob and I are going to have to make the trip to Seattle ourselves.
PR has a big hammer that you don't want to get hit with.
Yeah, they gave me a parking space. I'm trying to maintain that. I'm using their Wi-Fi currently. You can't bite the hand that feeds you.
Jeff Garza's treating you nice.
Yeah, they feed us every day, so I'm trying to, be a company man, I guess, in that way. I think I've decided on this. They can run more than they're prepared to run more than the tush push if Jalen and Sam are on the field together. I'll put it that way. I can say that with confidence. Today was a little funky, but that statement is true. That's all I give you there. As far as Sam, yeah, I think he just didn't see the field well before last year. Honestly, it just was like he made a lot of throws where it was like, dude, what are you looking at? You know, because sometimes the big arm guys, it's like, okay, I see what you saw there, but they call it arm arrogance. You know, like he had a lot of some guys have like arm arrogance. That was Josh Allen's thing on top of accuracy. That's honestly still Matt Stafford's thing. Like he throws the ball right to DBs quite a bit. He's very fortunate. DBs can't catch, or Stafford would have a lot more picks. So I think that was part of Sam's thing too, but it was more so like, hey man, it was a linebacker right there, right? You don't see that as much anymore. Like he did throw a pick today, actually, I think, but it bounced off Elijah's hands, Elijah Arroyo. It wasn't like a bad read thing, whereas Drew Lock threw a pick today, and he probably didn't see Patrick O'Connell, who just took it back for 6. Like just different turnovers between the quarterbacks, whereas Jalen, he has problems with just seeing guys and everything. Sam's seeing the field really well. He was playing the red zone today, where I'm sure it's designed to go to Cup after some motions. And I think Spoon was like all over it, right? Okay, don't force it. Just throw it somewhere else or let the play die, which I think is what happened on that particular play. And that is really important because that don't go broke taking a profit thing is something that Gino will tell you he was always this good, which is fine. The games are on TV, so we don't have to lie about that. But one thing he will actually say that he got better at is understanding like a 3-yard check down on 1st and 10 is okay. That is important because that really is that's how you be consistent. You're never going to consistently make the wow plays. That was honestly a lot of Russ's problem early on too. It's like you can't just play action deep shot it every time. Like your running backs matter, your check downs matter, playing on time matters, like all that stuff. I see Sam doing that really well. The preseason game didn't matter to me as much in that regard. Like he didn't have to make that many decisions. I think the one like read he really had to make was the throw that ultimately went to AJ Barner, I think it was on the opening drive. But even then, I actually thought he went through his reads too fast, and if he'd have waited, probably could have made a bigger play. But it's the preseason, so you don't want Sam doing what Joe Burrow was doing the other night, where that was subtly ridiculous. Joe looked like he was in a wrestling match with the Commanders' defense. That was dumb. But I think Sam's decision making is probably the thing that I've noticed the most because Mike's defense is on a lot of these concepts. And Brian knows this. We can hear the defense sometimes when they come off the field, like going over stuff, saying like, oh, we knew this was coming. Here's this, here's that. Like they're on a lot of this stuff. And it forces Sam to just be smart. Because if he's wrong, someone's going to take one of his passes back to the house and it won't be one of his players, one of his offensive players. So I think his decision making has really stood out.
Yeah, and what an advantage it is for Sam Darnold and the Seahawks offense to go up against this defense, right? Like you think about who you're really practicing every single day and who you're preparing for. It makes your offense so much better and just gives you better looks. But I want to talk about the wide receiver room because I'm sure a lot of people want to know about how this is going to shake out. And it's a good thing when you have hard decisions to make for the right reason. So Brian, I know you've had a very consistent take on the situation concerning MVS, but is there a chance that we see a surprise cut, or what do you see in here?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the storylines today was kind of funny. All the guys that have been kind of injured or have not been making a lot of noise, all of a sudden we're on the field with 1 week to go until cutdowns, and we're making some plays. So I don't know. MVS caught a couple passes today, one a pretty deep shot. Both of them were contested, and I honestly can't remember the last time I saw him make a catch in practice of any significance, especially in a team drill. So it was his best practice, I would say. I wouldn't say it was like a dominant practice, but it was a meaningful one. And I do kind of have this question mark. They're going to Green Bay this week. He's former Packer. Romeo Doubs is a guy that's a question mark. There's kind of some discussion that maybe the receiver in Green Bay, might get cut or might not make the team. Does John Schneider like kind of cozy up with his old pals in Green Bay and say, hey, like, we'll give you ours if you give we'll give you ours if you give you yours, give us yours. And maybe they swap, somewhat vet receivers, and maybe they're better fits for each other. I don't know. I know that Green Bay is having trouble with their receiver room. I don't know that MVS is the solution for it, though. So right now, if I had to bet on it, I think that they're trying to find some way to not have MVS on the roster, but they do have $3.5 million guaranteed. And whether fans like it or not, the money talks in these situations. And they're going to have to find something. It would be hard to just straight cut MVS, even though I think Jake Bobo and Derek Young are more valuable special teams players, more valuable players overall over the course of a season.
Yeah, well, it's interesting just the ties with the Packers with Schneider, but also a lot can happen with those joint practices when scouts get together. So it's a very interesting take, Brian. So you heard it here first on the Seahawks Collective, if there's some movement there. But Rob, how do you see this wide receiver room shaking out?
Well, the thing about MVS, the thing about in general with the roster is the Seahawks, to me at least, seem to make decisions based on keeping as many of the people they want to keep. So they will have to determine if they cut Derek Young, is somebody, e.g. maybe the Raiders, for example, or somebody like that, going to go and put a claim in and then lose him? And if the answer to that, if they sort of do the homework on that and determine that they can maybe put someone like that on the practice squad and then call them up or anything like that and keep as many of the guys that they want, then they'll do that. But they won't want to lose anybody. So I think that plays a part in it. The thing with Marquez Valdez-Scantling is, the thing we have to remember is that he had a very good stretch with the Saints last year when Kubiak was there and kind of emerged from nowhere. And I think he had 70 yards a game for a 5 or 6 game stretch. And I just wonder whether or not they want to give him the opportunity to fail in the regular season before they part ways. And I know that obviously when you get into the regular season, it guarantees a contract and stuff like that. But if you're going to cut him anyway, I think you save something like just less than $1 million. So it's not a huge difference whether you sort of give him an opportunity to show what he could do in a regular season game or whether you part now. So they would have to really like their younger guys. I think Jake Bobo is definitely going to be on the roster. It's just whether or not someone like Derek Young has maybe done enough for them to say, we are going to spend $4 million for this guy to go away and not give him an opportunity to do something. Unless there is a trade out there, there could potentially be some team that is willing to just take him on and give you somebody else at a different position or give you a ham sandwich for him. So we will see there. But it's interesting. I think overall this receiver room is probably better, at least to me anyway. It feels better than it did before training camp, and the young talent that they've got has been encouraging, to complement what they have on this roster. So I'm feeling pretty good about the position.
Just a quick follow-up on that, Rob. I'm curious why you feel better about the receiver room. And the reason I'm bringing it up is I agree with you. And it's not because I necessarily think that they're really good, but it feels like they fit with what they're trying to do. I'm curious what your reasons are.
For me, it was more a case of, we were looking at, obviously they've got Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp, but what else is there? You were relying on some younger players contributing or the tight ends contributing. But because Torrey Horton's played so well, we kind of just assume, well, okay, that's fine. Torrey Horton can be the third receiver now if he's healthy, obviously. And that's a position that feels a lot more solid than it did maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. And then you see Jake Bobo making a couple of catches, a couple of touchdown catches. And I keep coming back to this Juwan Jennings comparison. They're not exactly the same player, but they've got similar size, similar height. Jennings ran a 4.71 at his combine, so he's not a fast player. And yet this was a player that last year had nearly 1,000 yards for the Niners and 6 touchdowns. Now, that doesn't mean that Jake Bobo is going to do that. But if you are looking for ways to create production to the value of a third receiver, can Horton and Bobo combined produce the kind of numbers that you would need from a third receiver? And when you're sort of watching him play the other day, I was thinking, yeah, you can. And then you've got Derek Young into the mix. He looks really sharp. He looks like a good player. Marquez Valdez-Scantling could still be on the team, and maybe if he does make the roster, he's not necessarily going to be somebody who contributes every week, but he has shown within this offense that he can make big plays. So I just feel like there's more depth than when we were coming into camp. I think we discussed it a little bit. Should they go out and make a trade? I certainly was talking to the guys on my stream about, do they need to go and look at McLaurin and somebody like that? Do they need to go and add another receiver? You mentioned Romeo Dobbs in Green Bay. He was a name that was mentioned. No one's having that conversation anymore. So I think that's the positive thing over the last few weeks.
Mike, where do you fall in this wide receiver discussion?
I do think that Marquez is going to get the benefit of the doubt in the offense, even though he hasn't done much in camp, because of the familiarity with Kubiak. I think you don't very similar, not very similar, but I guess almost similar to Jonathan Hankins right now. Like, Mike McDonald doesn't need to see Jonathan Hankins do anything in August because he's seen it. Aiden Durde did the same thing. It would probably be nice if MVS had some great practices. He did have a couple catches today, but they've seen it when it matters against multiple teams. So I do think there's some benefit of the doubt there. I think that also the Bobo and Juwan Jennings, I really like him, mostly because he pisses the Seahawks off. Jennings does. They all hate his guts. And I want this rivalry to be a thing. You just need people that dislike each other to make it be a thing. Same reason I like Lenore, the corner over there, and San Fran too. He just pisses the Seahawks off. So it makes for good theater.
You want to put it in your next book. You just want the competition for a good storyline for your next book.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think Jake, so the way I look at wide receiver 3 on this offense, which is probably even a less important position than it was before in like Grubb's offense, like it's probably a really low volume position here, is if I'm looking at a guy to do that, I'm like, all right, if it's 3rd and 7, do I feel comfortable drawing up a play for you? Like, are you worthy of that? Because you're not running any like dummy routes, because you don't have any gravity. Like who's following the through route to Jake Bobo, right? So they can leave JSN. No, safety's going to cheat to JSN and Cooper. That's a smart safety would, at least. But I do think Jake, more than the other guys, has ascended to that, where I'm like, all right, playing the Niners. They got their best guy on. They got Lenore on JSN. They got whoever on Cup, but they have like their 4th round rookie nickel on Jake. I do feel comfortable saying, all right, this play we're going to call is for Jake, because I feel like he's going to get open and he's going to catch it. And that's the same thing Jennings does for the Niners. They did it at a higher volume last year because everyone's knee just went to hell. But what they learned, and what Jennings even showed against the Seahawks in the game down there, actually both games last year, was on 3rd down, he'll get open and catch it. Like it's that simple, because 3rd down is where they're using the 3rd receiver. 1st and 2nd down, I thought that the opening drive on Friday night was very instructive. How many different people caught a ball? Right? It was Robbie, Elijah, AJ, Jackson. Like it wasn't. I think that's kind of how they want the offense to be, kind of how you would coach middle schoolers. Like everyone gets to touch the ball before we score, right? Like that's the mindset. It's not when you watch like the Bengals offense where it's like, we're just going to feed Jamar until they stop it. Like this is more Pop Warner-ish in a good way. So I think the 3rd guy doesn't matter that much, but it does need to be someone who, all right, 3rd and 5, we need a bucket. Do I draw the play up for you? Because that's really huge to me versus you just being on the field. So, yeah, I do think MVS is going to make it, though. But right now, he doesn't feel like that guy to me. He feels more like early down, run up the field so we can get Jackson open guy, which is valuable, too. But, I got some questions about it.
I gotta ask you guys, because there's 2 things that have been bouncing around my head related to this topic. AB is 1, how often do you think we're going to see a 2 receiver package that is Torrey Horton and JSN without Cooper Kupp on the field? And 2nd is, who do you think is going to be the 2nd leading receiver on this team, and who do you think is going to be the 3rd? I think those are going to be really telling. Like, is it going to be a tight end? Where's Cooper Kupp in that list? I don't know if I figured that one out yet. And right now, I think the tight ends are going to be a lot bigger part of this offense than the 3rd receiver.
Right, and they're young. I think that's what's so exciting about all this. You have young tight ends, and we're debating who the wide receivers are going to be because of the depth that we have, right, with the Seahawks. And that's what's going to make the Seahawks dangerous when you're spreading it around, especially in the preseason. Now, that's on film, right? Like totally new offensive look that the Seahawks have coming. But I do want to talk about the part of the offense that is going to allow Sam Darnold to have the time to hit these wide receivers, right? Because it's the guys in the trenches. So maybe we'll start with Mike. Who are your starting O-line right now as of today? What is it? August 19th. As of August 19th, where do you see this starting O-line going?
Yeah, I think to bring back that's what it looks like thing, I think Jalen Sundell was that in both games, really, but particularly on Friday. I was just like, wow, man, like had me looking up who the nose tackle was for the Chiefs. I was like, is he a starter? Because if not, like he's out of here. Like his film day was probably really bad on Saturday when they got back to Kansas City. Whereas Jalen's, it was like, oh, that's what it's supposed to look like in this scheme. Like the center has to be really, really athletic, has to move. The snaps obviously have to be on point, but you got to be able to get across the nose, his face, and hold him off and then try to carry that up the field as we get to the second level. You're asking a lot of a center in the scheme, which is why I believe Kubiak, I think on KJR and like March or whatever he got hired, was like, we need a really kick-ass center in this scheme. And that's why, and you see it. That was really solid. Like I talked to O-line coach John Benton on Sunday, I think it was. And yeah, he was just gushing about Jalen. He was like, yeah, that's it. He didn't say that's what it looks like, but in effect, that's what he was saying. So I think with him, the only questions that it was just a center and right guard. I thought like that healthy Olu, I think would probably have a hard time playing like that good. That was really, really, really in the run game. That is like, I think he'd have a hard time playing that solid. And that was probably, I wouldn't say that's the best I've seen AB look, because he had some games, even like we're a rookie, I thought like, okay, there's something there. Anthony Bradford, that is. But I do think like it was almost like what's the phrase? Like a rising tide, all boats type of thing. Like I think the way their O-line is right now, if you're not playing well every snap, you're just going to kind of stand out so much that your motivation is almost like, I don't want to be on the tape for the wrong reasons. Very similar to when Pete would put like the lowlights of people on the practice film the next day. They'd watch it in the meeting room, and it's like, yo, I don't want to be on the screen for the wrong reasons. It's almost like, I haven't talked to Bradford, but it almost feels like that's how he's playing. It's like, yo, the other four guys are locked in, so I should lock in too, which is good, because last year there was a lot of games where it's like the other four guys are locked in and I'm false starting, or I'm holding, or I'm just blocking the wrong way. Like it was so much.
Wait a second. Are you saying that there were games where 4 Seahawks offensive linemen were locked in? Because I'm not sure I'm not sure I saw a game where 2 Seahawks offensive linemen were locked in last year.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it was quite there was some bad games last year. It was so bad. But yeah, there were definitely games where this is bad, and like, what is 75 doing? And I think that there's just when teams talk about like accountability and standards, they're like buzzwords this time of year. I'm so used to hearing them and printing them. It's sometimes you can also see why they use those words. Like the standard in the O-line room just feels higher. It just does. Whether that translates to wins, I'm not sure. But before, man, it just seemed just so low. You know what it reminds me of? Since this is the day I'm just giving comps on the show. It reminds me of 2018 when they had Fluker. Like the standard and Sweezy, like Sweezy and Fluker were very like standard setters. Like you just can't be a bum today, because Sweezy and Fluke just won't let you. Like they're just playing too hard. They're too nasty. They're too ready to fight Aaron Donald. Like that was just an attitude in the standard. Kind of feels like that's being set now. And the person I'm sure most people were curious about living up to it would be Bradford. And I think he has. So with him, Abe, Gray, and then obviously when Charles gets back, I think there's your 5.
Rob, where's your 5 at right now? Because there is some talk about Sundell and how well he's playing at center, but where do you see this O-line shaking out?
So I've got Reese Odiambo, Luke Jokel, Patrick Lewis, Mark Glowinski, and Jermaine Afedi. Actually, before I give you my 5, you brought up DJ Fluker there. It brought back a great memory of when the Seahawks came to London in 2018. And I had a press pass for that game at Wembley. And I went into the locker room after the game and interviewed a naked DJ Fluker who was sat at his locker with a towel, which would have, wrapped around my entire body and given me ample protection. But on a man the size of DJ Fluker, it was as if he'd placed, I don't know what you guys call it, but we call it a flannel. It's like a face, sort of little face cleaner.
A handkerchief.
Oh, got you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we call that a flannel.
we call it a flannel. But it was like he had a handkerchief covering him. And I interviewed him there in the locker room, and it's an image that is seared into my brain. So the team that I have gone with for the O-line is obviously Cross, Zabel, Sundell, Bradford, and Lucas. I think it seems pretty clear cut at this point that they'll probably go with that. The Dalton Risner thing, is interesting, but I think that's about having some more experience depth. And some depth that they're more confident in. I think they know what the line is. I don't really know why they don't just name it, unless they just just want to get this game out of the way and don't feel there's any need to name it yet. But it does feel as if that has to be the line, especially with the way they played last week. That has to be the starting line now.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Risner and just the visit that he's potentially going to take with the Seahawks. I know that was reported on tonight by Jeremy Fowler, and he was in Cincinnati, I think, today. But what are your guys' thoughts on that and the potential addition to this O line?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Rob. I think it's a depth move. I don't think it's a starter move. I think that I've been speculating this past few days. I don't know if Christian Haynes makes this roster. I think they might be looking for a team that's like, hey, he was higher on our draft board last year. He was a 3rd-round pick. And there's a lot of teams that don't have offensive line. So like maybe they can convince somebody to give up some kind of conditional pick. And even if they don't, I think if you look at, I think they're happy with their starting 5, which I have the same starting 5 as these guys. But you look at the guard depth behind them, like Mason Richmond, Bryce Cabledew, I think are nice developmental guys. I have Mason Richmond making the roster, and he's played tackle, guard, center for them. I don't know if you feel good about any of those guys taking snaps if they have to play extended periods at guard. And so I think getting a veteran like Risner, however now his name's pronounced, I don't know, it could make sense. The question is, first of all, he played with Clint Kubiak and I think Dennison in 2022 in Denver. So they know him. He knows them. But does he want to be a backup? Because in Cincinnati, my guess is he'd be a starter. And so that's kind of the question. Because if he comes in and he's the starter, personally, I think that wouldn't sit well in that room because Anthony Bradford has earned that spot. Like he's come in and done everything he's supposed to do. I don't know how well that would go. So, and as far as like the announcing thing, this has been kind of a weird thing for me that I've picked up on since I've been able to get a little bit more closer to the team. You kind of think that coaches would tell players stuff. A lot of times they just don't. Like there was like, I know there was some communication stuff when Connor Williams was retiring and Olu thought something was going to happen and then it didn't and then it did. And I feel like a lot of times the players just don't get that. There's not this like clear-cut message. And so, you know, Mike McDonald said, I don't know if we're going to quote announce it. I think the way they go by it is we just operate. The guys that are getting the snaps get the snaps. And until that changes, that's how it's going to be. And I don't think they make a big proclamation about these things.
It's a business, Brian. They're not looking to make friends.
Well, usually when you get promoted, AB, someone tells you, or when you don't get the job, someone says, hey, sorry, you're gonna be you know, the assistant. But
yeah.
Maybe not so much here.
Well, Brian, while we're talking to you, we got a question from Jacoby just on Byron Murphy's Byron's play last preseason game. What makes you nervous about this at all?
I wouldn't say it makes me nervous. I think Byron Murphy's floor is really high. Like Byron Murphy was a good player, an above average player last year. And if you just get that player with more snaps, he's going to be a good player for your defense. But I don't think a good or above average player is what the vision was for Byron Murphy when they took him 16 last year. I think the vision was this guy can mess up other teams' offenses. He can be a problem every snap. And I don't know that I'm seeing that. Like Leonard Williams today was destroying the offensive line for a lot of plays. They could not block him. We saw that in regular season games last year. I've not seen a practice or a game or a 1v1 drill or anything where Byron Murphy was unblockable, where he was a problem. I think he is a better run defender than he is a pass rusher. I think that will probably always be the case. When I've talked to him, he's talked to other people. He worked on pass rush this offseason. So far, I'm just not seeing that next, you know, big step forward. And so that's not a nervous thing. It's just you know, that's a lack of potentially a big weapon that hasn't really come to pass so far.
Can I just add something on this? Because I can remember talking to Jim Nagy before the draft, and he was really high on Byron Murphy and compared him to Grady Jarrett. And it's worth noting that if Grady Jarrett is the projection for Byron Murphy, that it took Jarrett quite a while to reach his best form in the NFL. So in year 2, well, he started 2 games, Grady Jarrett, as a rookie. In year 2, he started 14. He had 3 sacks, and he had a PFF grade of 62.7. So it really took Grady Jarrett until year 3, and year 4 was when he really became the player that everybody's kind of remembered. So I would suggest that people who are maybe worrying about Byron Murphy just need that bit of perspective, that if that's the player that, people who've been in the league and around the league were projecting him to be, it may just take him a little bit of extra time to become the player that he's capable of becoming.
You look like you're thinking. What are you thinking?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Well, I do think that they're going to have the same pass changing of the guard, because the term that they had last year with Tyler and Jackson with Murph and Jay Reed to really get the most out of Murph, just like you had to last year. I don't think there was a conversation like, oh, Tyler, you're behind Jax now. It was just kind of, he showed up from the bye week, played a couple games, and was like, I don't get the ball as much anymore. I guess that's that. I think it kind of has to be the same, because right now he's basically like their third defensive tackle, which no third defensive tackle wrecks any game really, because you're just not on the field that many times. You definitely don't wreck it as a pass rusher, because when you are on the field with next to Leo, then you next to like Boye and DeMarcus Lawrence, well, you're probably the one taking on the double team. That's what the fat guys do in the middle. So I do think to get him more opportunities, it's just going to have to be, all right, Jay Reed, you're still leader guy. We love you, but we got to, it's Murph's time now. And again, they didn't do that with Tyler and Jax. I don't think it sounded like last year, but it was kind of understood after the bye week, like, oh, wow, all these plays are for number 11 now. What did I do? And Tyler took that in stride, credit to him, but I think that's what was required to try to get the best out of the offense. So I think the same thing is probably true. Although I guess the difference is, it's probably you can keep Jay Reed in that role and still get the best out of the defense. But eventually, this is where Byron's a good case of like where front offices and coaches staffs tend to like have beef sometimes, where it's like, hey, we drafted this guy pretty high. Why is he not playing more? Some coaches are a little bit more confident saying, shut up, I got this. You're upstairs for a reason, type of thing. Some cave to ownership tends to butt in quite a bit. Usually you see that with quarterbacks more often, but first round picks in general, there's usually that beef. Not to say Snyder and McDonald are beefing, but this is kind of that scenario where that would happen, particularly in a case where you got like Jay Reed is attached to the old regime a lot more. But he's leader guy too, so it's tricky. But yeah, I'm not worried about Murph. I do think though in his current role, he's probably not going to wreck any games. It's just hard to do that when you're not getting that many snaps.
Yeah, well, he was the guy that was all the rage coming into last season and the pick that the Seahawks had with him. So we'll see. But we can't finish talking about the Chiefs game without mentioning the Seahawks tush push. So I got to know what you guys think about this. And Brian, I'll start with you. What are your general thoughts on the Seahawks using this, and really even Jalen Milroe as well in this offense?
Yeah, AB.
I know you can't say that much. I know you've already made it clear, but I do want to know because it's getting some national attention for sure.
Yeah, to me, it's less about the tush push or anything specific. It is Jalen Milroe is one of your best offensive weapons. He's one of your best athletes, if not your best athlete on the offensive side of the ball. Like he's in the conversation with K9 and JS, and like he's just a special player. And short yardage, red zone situations are high leverage, highly meaningful snaps. And if you're as a coach unable to figure out how to utilize one of your special talents to give you an edge, then shame on you. Like that's honestly like you're not earning your keep. And it just so happens that Clint Kubiak had experience with Taysom Hill last year. It happened to be shorter than he would have liked because Taysom Hill got hurt, but he's seen a player that can be used in multiple ways. I think they think Jalen Milroe is a much different player than Taysom Hill. I think has the potential to be a much better passer. I think he could be a pure quarterback. I don't think Taysom Hill has that in his game. I also don't think you're going to see Jalen Milroe as a fullback or a tight end. But I think finding a way to get Jalen Milroe on the field and be an active part of the roster every single week has to be on all of their minds. And just seeing that on Friday was just validating that, okay, they see it the way some of us see it. We're not going to get this coach speak of he has to earn it. He has to show it. And like, well, he can't show it if you don't actually practice it and you don't actually do it. And so we're seeing that they're starting to do that. I think that could be one of the big surprises of this season for this offense, for a team that every national person comes in here and they're like, yeah, like Cooper Kupp's washed up from our perspective and JSN's fine, but who's their next guy? And, the offensive line's not good. I think Jalen Milroe is a guy that nobody ever talks about nationally as potentially being a meaningful weapon for this team.
Yeah, and whether or not they use it, it's on film, right? So now every team has to prepare for it and has to be ready. But you would hope that the Seahawks can use Milroe in those situations on goal line or just third downs in general. But do you guys, Rob or Mike, do you have any strong feelings about the tush push that we saw?
Well, not the one that we saw, though. I do think the kind of, I wouldn't call it conundrum that Brian's kind of describing there is kind of why I wasn't high on them taking Milroe, because I do think that he has a very unique skill set. They just needs reps. You should play him. And I don't think he's like a Kubiak, West Coast, play on time, under center, drop back. All the things you're talking about that Sam does well, Jalen's a completely different player for a completely different scheme, to be honest. So I do think they probably got him and were like, square peg, round hole. How does this work? Let's figure that out. My only hot take on the tush push, my only take on it, I guess, is that I kind of treat it like one of those questions like, do you like pineapples on your pizza? Is a hot dog a sandwich? Like just random, like, I'm about to judge you based on your answer questions, is essentially where that
I'm not
going
to make you give your answer to that because we don't have that much time and I want to get to some injury updates. But if we had a longer show, this would get heated based off of your answer for that.
Yeah, I will say this. I am for the tush push is not like a cheat code play, which is kind of how it's discussed nationally. It's a cheat code play when the Eagles do it, which doesn't make it a cheat code. That's kind of
when you have Saquon, it's a cheat code.
Take. Yeah, so I don't. That's where my one tush push hot take.
Rob, do you have any strong feelings, or we'll move on to some injury updates that people got to know?
Oh, only that I think the words tush push, when said in a British accent, do not sound good.
You're not wrong. It's unique, but gives us a good laugh. But I want to get to some injury updates because there were some notable updates from the last time that we talked. Torrey Horton left the game early with an ankle, but McDonald said that it was just something they decided to shut him down. Could have gone back in. Did he practice today?
He did not. No
he did
practice
not.
for Torrey Horton. No practice for Tyrese Knight either.
Do you think we'll see Horton at the joint practice or at the preseason game?
That's
I guess
wish we would have got, I don't think so either. I wish we would have got Mike McDonald today because I still believe that those two, Tyrese, I'm jumping ahead, but I think Tyrese and Torrey still need the reps. They do, whether it's in the preseason game, which is probably be in Torrey's case, or the joint practice, which in Tyrese's case, that's where I think it would be valuable. I don't think we'll see either one do either thing. And I think that's unfortunate because, they're young. They're both good players, but they're young and still need those reps. I think those are really valuable.
I would be surprised if Horton's not ready for the regular season, though. I don't think it's that kind of injury we're talking about. I don't know. I'm just telling you based off of like what I saw in that game and how they've talked about it and how he moves around. I just would be surprised. The Tyrese Knight thing, I don't know. Like, it's a weird situation. I think he should be all right, but like Mike McDonald said, we were going to hear something else in a few days, and then chose not to be available today. So I don't think that's the
guy.
reason. I don't think
that
that's the reason why.
By Mike McDonald there. No. That's in there. I don't want to talk to the media and give him anything else I have to. That's a vet savvy move by Mike. I peeped that today. That was no accident. I'm very sure.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to be optimistic from Mike, but yeah, definitely concerning just it being a separate medical issue from the knee injury with Knight. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But some good news, Chenna is back past his physical. So hopefully that will give the defense a big boost. We don't know exactly when he'll be back. Do you guys have any predictions? Will he be back for week 1? What are you thinking here?
I forgot. What's the pup rule? He would have had to miss 4 games, 6 games?
4 games.
I always
So
he'll be back by at least week 4 then. I would imagine, unless these guys are just idiots. They've been wrong on something like that before, but that would probably
they were wrong
be my
on
guess.
Chenna with that before.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah,
Last
yeah, they got that wrong too. So that would be my guess. Hopefully they learned. from that. I do think though, my just one little Chenna thing for get out of here. I was like, I was of the impression these guys need a guy on the edge, and they probably still do. But I watched some more Chenna film last night because I wrote a story on him that's coming out tomorrow. Oh man, I think healthy Chenna can be a guy. I do. I don't know if he'll be that with no offseason basically to ramp up. Maybe it had to be next year or something. But I just think he has the talent to be a guy. You know, I do. The Seahawks haven't had a 10-sack edge rusher since Frank in 2018. I think Chenna is the type of talent who could break that. Again, I don't think he will this year because injuries, games, yada yada. But I do think he is that type of talent.
All right, well, we will see. But before we get to a quick preview of the preseason game, I do want to bring up a guy that could make a difference in this defensive room, may or may not even come. Trey Hendrickson. Quickly, what are your guys' takes on this? Do you think the Seahawks should make a move on defense? We know it's getting a little ugly in Cincinnati right now, and the rumors are beginning. But what are your takes on this, real quick?
Rob, where are you at on this?
I don't think they're going to do anything. I mean, if they did it, I would be in favor of it. But I don't think they're going to do anything. You know, when Mike McDonald was in Baltimore, their top edge rushers were Jadeveon Clowney and Kyle Van Noy. You know, on a one last good go for the old lads in Baltimore there. So I think what's more likely is development. And you know, you have a really good head coach, defensive-minded head coach. You have an exceptional elite, probably the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. Definitely not giving him that status just because he is English. It's definitely worthwhile anyway. But because of that, you know, maybe you're going to develop your own guys. And this is the thing: is Trey Hendrickson, first 3 seasons in the NFL, 6.5 sacks. Derek Hall had 8 last season alone, and Boyer Mafe has 18 in his first 3 seasons. So they may think, look, Trey Hendrickson wasn't Trey Hendrickson in his first contract. You know, this was a player that developed over time. Maybe they'll prefer to develop their own rather than because you are going to have to pay a fortune to pay Trey Hendrickson, and you are going to have to give the Bengals something that's going to make them say, yes, we will give away the sack leader in the NFL from last year. So I just don't think that's going to happen.
Well, we got Stuart S. saying we got all we need. So seems like the Seahawks, based on what you guys are saying, could be good. But let's get quickly to the Cheeseheads because that's what's up next for the Seahawks. They'll have the joint practice with the Green Bay Packers in Wisconsin on Thursday. Mike will be representing the Seahawks Collective crew. Thank you for going before the preseason game. And on Sunday, Mike McDonald said that likely our starters, the Seattle Seahawks, I keep saying our starters, but Seattle Seahawks starters will get most of their action during the practice. So it'll be interesting to see who we see and how much of we see the ones. But for you guys each, I'd love to know who is a guy on the Seahawks roster that you have your eye on, whether or not you need him to ball out or you just are going to be keeping a close look on him. So I'll start with you, Mike. Who's a guy that you're going to be watching closely this preseason game?
In the joint practice, I was very surprised that Mike McDonald confirmed that Ken's supposed to participate. I thought they would hold Ken out, but since Ken's going to run, I want to see Ken. I want to see him behind this because I think he's much better than Zach, but I agree with what Rob said earlier. They are soft launching Zach as RB1 right now. It's teetering between soft launch and hard launch right now between Mike McDonald basically being like, yeah, I need him to practice because it matters, and all the other stuff they've said about Zach in news conferences. So I want to see Ken ball out. It doesn't like he needs to prove he's talented, but I do think quietly he got to prove himself to this new staff, which is understandable. And I think the joint practice will be the place to do it.
I don't know. It feels like a hard launch for sure with how Charbonnet has been playing. But Rob, who do you have your eye on this game?
I want to watch a bit more Brandon Peely after that great move for a safety. I really need to focus on him a little bit more. So I'm looking forward to watching him. And I've enjoyed watching Jocadia Wright. I really enjoy watching him run the football. So I think it's quite an interesting little group they've got of running backs here. So although obviously Alani's been done ever so well, and we're talking about who's going to start, I've just enjoyed watching Wright run the ball. So if it's the final preseason game, I hope they're not going to keep the starters out there very long. So I hope he gets a decent go at this, and I'd like to see him run the ball again.
Brian, who you got?
For me, it's pretty easy. Jalen Milroe. I mean, he should get most of the run in this game, if not all of it. And we've seen him behind the third string line, and a lot of the snaps last game were just running out the clock, handing it off to running backs. Like, we should see more of a full performance from him. So I think that's the big one. I'm also curious if Olu is going to get some snaps in this one, and if he, tries to make one last ditch effort to say, "Hey, don't forget about me." So yeah, those are the two guys that rise to the top for me.
All right. Well, before we go, it seems like, Brian, you've been very popular in the show today. So I'll bring up one last comment, just maybe about the running game. How creative do you see this running game being for the Seahawks, but so specifically in this next preseason game and probably for week 1?
Yeah, I don't know if creative is the word I'd use. Bravo, you look like you're going to say something.
I was just trying to think, who was the coach who called his offense exotic smash mouth? Who was it? Was it the Jaguars guy?
Like Liam Cohen or
no,
former Jags coach?
No, a few years ago. It was before that. There was
There's so many Jags coaches, it's hard to keep track.
There was like a really old school coach, and it was the most surprising thing when he just came out and said, "Yeah, we're calling our offense exotic smash mouth."
That is hilarious. I don't remember that. I do not think that's the way you'll describe this offense. I think this is almost the opposite of exotic. This is as conventional as it can be. This is an offense that has been run for decades, and I think you're going to see wide zone. I think you're going to see some gap time to time, but that's going to be a changeup. I think you're going to see them continuing to run off of this and do boots off of it. I think it's going to look like, if you want a Seahawks comparison, I think it's going to look similar to a Mike Holmgren offense. Like, I think it looks like a West Coast offense with a focus on wide zone. And what makes it look maybe exotic is the Seahawks might gain some yards on the ground, and that feels exotic compared to the negative yardage and the contact yards before contact for both Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker was negative last year, meaning that they were contacted on average before they got to the line of scrimmage. That's what's going to feel different, and I think there's a chance that could be a huge difference this year versus the last few.
Hey, if that's the definition of exotic, then we'll take it. And all Seahawks fans should be absolutely pumped about it. But guys, thanks so much for jumping on. I'm excited to hear about this joint practice, see the last preseason game before the Seahawks get rolling. But big week for the Seahawks. So thank you all for watching the Seahawks Collective. I'm Annabelle Hasselbeck. We will see you all next week.